All right, and here we go. Another episode of the RR Show. We've got 4 stories. They're all coming from a single subreddit, r/EntitledPeople. So what do you say? Let's jump into this episode of the RR Show. Are you ready? We'll do it right now. Our first story under the subreddit, of course, r/EntitledPeople, posted by user Illegal Avocado 2975. When my mailbox moving became political. So when we bought the house and moved in 3 years ago, we accepted the location of the mailbox. It's on the other side of our driveway and across some uneven ground, about 50 yards away from the door. This wasn't a problem back then, but since that point, we've had a series of bad luck. Wife needed a new knee, I sprained an ankle, and while it's healed enough to walk on and go back to work, anyone who has had one knows that it can take a while before it's back to 100%. So it was decided the mailbox ought to be moved to the end of our path to the street, straight ahead on a flat and smooth surface, and only about 30 feet away. We asked the post office what we needed to do to move a mailbox. Was told that all we needed to do was let the driver know that it was being moved and to just move it, making sure that it's numbered to match the house so there's no confusion. Went to the store to buy a new one since the old one was getting a little ratty from getting hit a couple of times, and installed it this weekend. Which, to our amusement, was the best time to install it since we actually caught the driver and were able to tell her that here was the new mailbox and that the other one was going away. Great! Situation handled. Installation goes well, and now we're on to part 2, the removal of the other mailbox. Here's where moving the mailbox got political. The old mailbox was on the same post as my neighbor across the street, and one house over, so we shared it. During this past election, I posted no signs supporting either of the candidates. My neighbor John, not his real name, had a half a dozen signs, flags, and a banner in his yard to support a certain candidate. John came over as I was removing the old box and complained that the only reason I was doing this was that I didn't support said candidate, and this was my petty-ass reason, and that I just didn't want to be associated with him. In truth, I didn't want to be associated with him, largely before I knew he was a supporter. He wasn't a very pleasant person. Walking my dog, he'd yell at me to keep that mud off my yard, even though I was on my side of the street. He'd also call animal control on me about my chickens running loose across his yard, when in reality it was his neighbor to his right that had the chickens. I don't have any, although I did buy a used chicken coop since it's also a very nice unit for keeping my wife's Angora rabbits in, so I could see the confusion. We used to wave to him like we do for any of our neighbors we'd see outside, and he'd never wave back. Typically just ignoring us and making a point to look at anything else other than us. Unless we had the dog, and he'd watch us like a hawk to make sure we didn't come near his lawn. Honestly, we disliked him long before we knew he was a supporter. I explained the medical condition, the walk through uneven ground that I stated above, but that wasn't enough for him. He threatened to call the HOA. We don't have an HOA, we have a neighborhood association that only concerns itself with collecting donations for snow removal and mosquito spraying. I just finished removing the mailbox, and I went back inside and vowed to ignore him from here on out. Another story in this r/EntitledPeople episode comes from That One Donut 88. Karen tells me I'm enabling a homeless man. So we have our fair share of homeless people in my town. The usual, ones at the end of exit ramps with signs or at the lights of highways. Usually I don't give anything because realistically, usually don't have anything to give. But yesterday, I had a decent day and actually found myself with a couple of bucks on hand. I see one particular man at the freeway light often, and I know some of his story. He doesn't use any money collected to purchase food, drink, non-alcohol that I've seen, and will accept items graciously, not just cash. So I pull up to the light, wave him over, and just hand him the $4 that I had. He thanks me and happens to walk across the intersection to the same gas station that I was headed to in the first place. I go in to get gas, he grabs some of the hot food and a cheap fountain drink. All good, right? Nope. In comes Karen. The typical look and everything. Big sunglasses, the haircut, yoga pants, all of it. She immediately storms over to the register and demands a manager. I'm only mildly paying attention because I just need gas. Manager comes forward and this woman points that ugly orange and red long nail at me. I need police here. That woman gave that drug addict money outside your establishment. And a slew of other really random and ever-growing nonsense. At this point, 3 other customers, me, the man I helped, and now a very interested customer are staring at her. Manager looks so confused, so I chimed in. I said, regardless that it isn't her business, I gave the guy a few bucks across the street, and he's buying food. Manager's like, okay. Karen isn't happy. She's screaming that obviously the station is a front for drugs and all sorts of crazy shiz. At this point, I've lost interest. Man buys his food, walks out. I get to the register, ask for gas. Is Karen done? No. She demands that if I'm gonna pay for his drugs, then I need to buy her gas. She tells the cashier and manager to put, I think, like 40 on whatever pump she was at on my dime and storms out. We all just blink. I chuckled a bit and told them how much gas I needed. I was just going to ignore it, but I'm petty. I said put $1 on her pump. Her screaming when the pump stopped at $1 was beautiful. I got my gas and left while she was storming back into the station. Best dollar I've ever wasted. And glad she didn't actually harass the poor guy, just trying to eat. All right, our third story in this r/entitled People episode comes from Potential Drive 8623. Entitled Lodger doesn't understand why he needs an appointment. For context, last summer, I had the unfortunate pleasure of dealing with a Karen who thinks a person washing their car at home also runs a car wash. The Karen complained to the lodge owner who she was staying with to probably stir up trouble or something. Anyway, the lodger, who I'll call D, talked to me about it and he had an idea. D had a slight business opportunity and he wanted to pitch it to me. He wanted to see if I wanted to make some money washing any lodgers' cars for them to offer something no one else in town had. So we talked for a couple of weeks and we came up with a plan. Days I have the afternoons off and weekends I can offer the lodgers a car wash. And if needed, I could clean their interiors too. D and I agreed that if the lodgers want their interiors cleaned, they need to first schedule an appointment with me and D so it works best for everybody. And so far, everything has been going good. People get their vehicles washed and I get some extra cash for fun stuff. That is until what happened last week when the entitled lodger had to make their grand appearance. It was a normal Thursday afternoon. I just finished washing a lodger's car and wrapping up the waxing, even though it's February. We wrapped up on having snow this year, and having a heated garage has its perks. I brought the car back to the lodge for the customer and let them check out their ride. They say thanks and pay, and I go to talk to Dee. When I walk into the lodge, I hear shouting and see Dee arguing with a lady whose face actually looks like it's from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who I'll call Karen, about how if she needs her car cleaned inside and out, she needs to schedule an appointment first. The conversation goes like this. D: I'm sorry, Karen, our guy needs you to make an appointment first so we can have everything ready. Well, what the hell kind of service is that it should be? He can do it now, when I'm ready, not when he feels like it. Again, sorry, our guy already has people lined up. That's why he does appointments. Also, he has another job, so he doesn't have a lot of spare time. Well, what the hell's wrong with him? Honestly, I came here to enjoy the scenery, and this is what I get, honestly. After what seemed like an eternity to D, he saw me with the payment and asked me, Hey, have you finished already? Me: Yeah, it wasn't too bad, but the guy's happy. Here's your part. I hand him his share. D: Thanks. Say, do you have any openings this weekend for a full cleaning? Me: Sorry, D, I'm booked up this weekend, but I'm available next weekend. Unfortunately for me, saying that it earned me the wrath of Karen. What do you mean booked up? I'm sorry, but I have other people lined up for some cleaning. Karen: I don't care if it's the president or Bill Gates. I need you to clean my car now. Sorry, ma'am, but I'm first come, first serve on car washing and for a full cleaning. I do appointments only. No, you will clean my car now. At this point, I know this conversation was not going anywhere, so I bluntly said no. What did you say? I said no. I can spell it out for you. N, then that's O, that's no. Karen starts screaming and stammering, not saying anything coherent. So I said, look, I don't really care who you are, but I was listening to you insult D here, and now you're trying to insult me, and frankly, you can crawl back into whatever hole you crawled out of, because I will not now nor ever wash your car. I look at D and say, have a good night, D, and went back home and was enjoying the blissful peace and quiet. On Saturday, I came back in to pick up the next client vehicle for a wash and found out from D that Karen's husband was not too pleased that Karen was insulting the owner and the guy doing the car washing, that they packed up and left after only being there for less than a week. I was worried D was going to have some strong words with me about what happened and told me if anyone tries what Karen pulled, refuse them and let him know. D wasn't going to let this happen and let people get away with this. So now D and I are going to let future guests know car cleaning needs to be made by appointment or head downtown for a car wash. All right, here we go. Our final story in this r/EntitledPeople episode, coming from user Sunflower971. Neighbor helped herself to other people's stuff. Several years ago, I heard my sweet neighbor and another woman arguing on the sidewalk. I looked closer and noticed they were both pulling a plant pot in different directions and about to fight. No clue what was up, but knew my neighbor. If she was arguing, she was right. Me and my husband went over to intervene. My husband wanted to help make peace, and me, I was going to help my neighbor, no questions asked. Why the argument? The other woman was a new neighbor. Our nice neighbor noticed her plant pots were missing and were in the new neighbor's yard. Yeah, new neighbor had stolen nice neighbor's plants, plant pots and yard decor and decorated her yard with it. My nice neighbor had hand-painted several pots that were in her yard, thus they were easy to identify as hers. We all walked over to the new neighbor's yard to get our other neighbor's stuff back. When we got to the new neighbor's yard, we noticed several things. They looked both weird and very familiar. Oh yeah, and the new neighbor had called the cops on us, or at least someone did. Anyway, the new neighbor had planted patches of different types of grass all over the yard in a checkerboard pattern, as well mismatched shrubs and flowers. I looked at our house a little bit closer. Yep, we were missing grass patches from the side of the house and one of our shrubs. When the police arrived, the new neighbor was adamant the plants, pots, grass, shrubs, and yard decor were hers. She informed the cops she dug them up from other yards in the middle of the night and planted them. Yeah, she claimed finders keepers. Didn't quite work out. My nice neighbor insisted on pressing charges for petty theft and destruction of property. We just dug up our grass patches and replanted them. Some of them even survived it. Nosy neighbors kept walking by after new neighbor was arrested. As we were digging things up, we explained why to them. Neighbors kept recognizing stuff from her yard. One neighbor asked if we'd seen picnic tables as his yard was missing. We hadn't thought to check the backyard. But yep, picnic table and a yard full of her finders keepers haul. She moved pretty much right afterward. We didn't miss her. So thanks for being with us. The RR Show is a production of Evergreen Podcasts and Wessler Media. Now, if you'd be so kind, please follow or subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling extra nice, you might as well leave a 5-star review. But for more, visit the website, rrshow.com. That is rrshow.com. I'm your host, Vince, and we'll see you next time here on The RR Show.